If your nonprofit funding plan is, well, we'll just apply for grants, then you don't actually have a funding strategy. Let's dive into today's training. We're going to be talking about funding beyond burnout, and we're going to focus on talking about what it really means to go after grants, to have programs, and to diversify your revenue. So with that said, let's be honest. If your nonprofit funding plan is, well, we'll just apply for grants, then you don't actually have a funding strategy. You have really a hope strategy, and a hope is not a business model. Today, I'm going to be walking you through why grants alone are dangerous, what sustainable funding actually looks like, and how to build a diversified revenue engine that doesn't burn you out in your nonprofit group therapy practice. Before we get into the different segments, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Dr. Lauren Lawson. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm an AAMFT approved supervisor, and I'm an approved supervisor in California. And I've been running my nonprofit for the last 13 years. I've also worked simultaneously in community mental health, and I've overseen several programs at the same time and have worked my way up into executive leadership. So with that said, I focus on expanding my nonprofit currently today. We are operating in Pennsylvania and California. We have multiple Medicaid contracts, multiple Medi-Cal contracts. We offer sliding scale. We do commercial insurance. We take on associates, pre-licensed clinicians, interns, practicums, and I have a lot of experience of running the operations behind the scenes, paying myself well, and knowing how to diversify funding. So let's dive into segment 1, which is talking about the dangerous myths out there regarding nonprofits. So there are a lot of myths in the therapist world that a nonprofit means that you don't pay yourself well, you rely on donation, you take whatever funding you can get, and you make sacrifices forever. And to be honest, that's not really noble. It's actually just unsustainable. It's not going to work in the nonprofit model. So if you have this mindset of thinking of, oh, I'm going to apply for grants or I'm going to rely on grants, what you really need to know is that grants are competitive. They are restricted funding, and grants are temporary. It's a big risk. Even if you get a grant, a lot of times they don't expand beyond 1, 2, 3 years of funding. And grants control your programming. A lot of people don't realize this, but that's what I mean when I say grants are restricted funds. You have to use them for specific things, and there's a lot of reporting measures that you have to do and provide to the grantor. So grants are not the foundational funding for your nonprofit group therapy practice. And if one funding stream controls your organization, then you actually don't own your mission, right? You're then reporting to someone else, and it feels like community mental health all over again. Your funder actually owns the mission when it comes to grants. Now, there's other types of grants that you can do, but we'll talk about that at another training, and I've done a previous training on that. But generally, grants are not something that you want to go after unless you've been established for years and years and years. You can find a grant that's unrestricted, or you're set up operationally to be able to maintain that type of grant. And when you focus on only grants or funding in that way, this is how burnout ends up creeping back in. It's just in a different form, and it is bringing you right back into agency work, which we all know creates a lot of burnout. So that's really important to know up front. Segment 2 is what is sustainable funding and what does it actually look like? So if we want impact and freedom in our community, then we need structure. A healthy nonprofit has multiple revenue lanes, not just one. So think of it as like a 3-part engine. The first piece of the engine, that's the biggest part of the engine, is earned revenue. This includes fee-for-service programs. It can include program-funded programs. It includes sliding scale, which you have to do strategically. It can include contracts, like with other agencies, with schools. It can include workshops, training, commercial insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, Medi-Cal. All of those is all under earned revenue, fee-for-service or program-funded revenue. This gives you a lot of control. And I know what you're thinking is like, oh, well, I already have that set up. Yeah, you probably do. And you're probably, though, set up as a for-profit. And the con of being set up as a for-profit with this type of earned revenue, if you offer all these things, is then you're not gaining the tax exemption for providing affordable and accessible services to your community, and you are taxed on your corporate revenue income. So if you already do these things as earned revenue, then it benefits you to be under the nonprofit model. The second part of the engine is grants. You have to make sure if you're going to go after grants that you're strategic about it, you're aligned with the grant that you're going after. It's not initial funding, it's more of growth stage funding and more about capacity building funds, not your startup funds. So grants should accelerate you, they're not there to sustain you. And then the third part of the engine is community, meaning donations and fundraising, right? So individual donors, monthly giving, corporate sponsorships, events, fundraising campaigns, all of those fall under donations and fundraising. And those are also not your foundational funding. The foundational funding is the earned revenue. That's the part of the engine that's the biggest, that takes up the most space, and that creates sustainability. And then grants and fundraising and donations provide the acceleration, and they provide the supplemental income that you might need to cover certain expenses or to expand. And these three things together build long-term stability. And when these three things work together, you don't feel as desperate. You're not worrying about meeting payroll, and you're much more well positioned. So let's talk about segment 3. This is the early stage versus like growth stage revenue. And this is where a lot of people end up getting confused. In the early stage, you really need to focus on your structure. You need to focus on your operations. You need to focus on creating standard operating procedures, and you really need to have legal clarity, board alignment, and you need a revenue roadmap. If you skip all of these things and go right into grants or fundraising, you're going to miss a big piece of what sustains nonprofits. So once you're in the growth stage, then you can start diversifying, you can start optimizing. You have baseline numbers and data to help inform you of your different revenue options, and you can scale your programs. And that's the stage that my nonprofit is in now. We are in the scaling stage. We've hired in the last 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 new therapists and 2 new interns, just alone in Pennsylvania. So we are in the scaling stage. And this also means when you're in this stage, you can increase your executive compensation, because the more you scale, the more admin work there is and more oversight there is. But none of this works in the growth stage if your foundation is not built correctly. Now, I did build my foundation correctly, but I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and it took me a long time to get here because I did it myself. I didn't have anyone to guide me in the correct way. But we did eventually get here, and now what I like to do is impart all of what I've learned over the last 13 years to help you all set it up the right way the first time in a way short amount of time than it took me. So part of that is an identity shift, and that's segment 4. This is really about leadership positioning. If you're still thinking like a clinician, then you're going to price like a clinician. You will plan like a clinician. You'll underpay yourself like a clinician. You can't build a sustainable nonprofit with a scarcity identity. And a nonprofit is a tax status. It is not a vow of poverty or not making enough money. And yes, you can absolutely pay yourself well, and you can build the wealth, and you can have impact with that and freedom with it. I am living proof of that. I work 3 days a week in my nonprofit. I'm scaling my nonprofit. I have about 15 clinicians that work for me between Pennsylvania and California. Our revenue in the last 7 months was $277,000. I myself make a salary of $122,000, and that's before we started to expand. Now we're in our growth stage. So imagine what we can do in the next 7 months. But that's because our foundation is there. We know the numbers. We know what we have to meet. We have projections. And our foundational funding has been there for over 10 years. So here's the real issue that I see is that most therapists don't fail or not follow through because they lack passion. It's because they're trying to DIY something that requires a lot of structure that we're not taught in school. And when we're not taught that in school, it's a very new thing that can create a lot of self-doubt and a lot of uncertainty going into it. So they either build the nonprofit and then never move forward, or never even end up building it in the first place. So when I talk about it requires structure, what I mean is it requires the legal setup, the bylaws, the board formation, mission language, revenue planning, IRS filings. And a lot of that can feel very overwhelming when you don't know what it all means. And when it's overwhelming, you end up being stalled, right? A lot of you probably have felt that way as you've thought about, do I want to start a nonprofit? This is why I created my Done For You nonprofit quick start package. So if you're thinking, I want this done right, I don't want to mess up the legal structure, I don't want to waste a year trying to figure this out, or even more than a year, I want to start with a sustainable funding plan, then this package is definitely for you. So inside my Done For You package, I personally handle your legal formation. I help you structure your board correctly. I give you all the materials that you need to run a board effectively without all this legal jargon. I file your 501c3 application. I help you align your mission strategically within your community that's specific to the services you want to provide. And I help you build the foundation for diversified revenue so that you don't build burnout 2.0. You end up building something sustainable. And with this Done For You package, I do this in about 2 weeks, and you are usually approved by the IRS within 3 to 4 weeks. And then you can start executing the plan that we built together. So if you're serious about building a nonprofit that pays you well, creates the impact that you want in your community, and doesn't rely on one fragile funding source, then comment ready on this training, or DM me the word foundation, and I'll send you all the details for my Done For You package. It's priced at $997. I offer payment plans, and it's honestly a really great price. If you go out there and you try to DIY this yourself, you're going to end up spending a lot more money. And if you decide to pay a company that doesn't know anything about mental health services or therapy practices, you're going to pay minimum at least $1,200 for just filing the paperwork. And I give you so much more with the price that I'm offering. So if you want to build impact with strategy, comment ready or foundation, and I'll send you the link to the Done For You package, or we could set up a 15-minute consult. If anyone has any questions about foundational funding, let me know. What's your biggest fear about funding? Where do you feel stuck with funding when you think about a nonprofit, or if you already have a nonprofit? And are you currently relying on one revenue source? If you are, tell me what it is, and if it's working for you, if it's not working for you. And I'm also really curious if you've been stuck in the grant-only mindset. When you think about starting a nonprofit, is that the first thing you think of? Oh, well, then I'll qualify to be able to apply for grants. I'm really curious to see where people lie with this, and then I can build some additional trainings around the topics based on what you all comment. If you have any questions about my nonprofit, a big value of mine, and all my staff know this, is that I operate with full transparency about pay, about reimbursement, about what our profit looks like, about what our losses look like, mistakes I haven't made, and that I've made really good decisions. So I'm an open book. Ask me about it. I'm happy to help you all. I want people to know that this is another option that they can do, and you don't have to choose between community mental health and traditional private practice if you want to serve your community and give more accessible services.